call this meeting to order at 6:45. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda amendments, I have none.
I do want to pass out an early draft of the school choice policy for, and the request for non-resident tuition. I don't have that request in writing from the parents, so we could maybe do it then if you want it.
Okay, so eliminate request for non-resident tuition, and then we'll do the early draft for school choice instead.
And again, that's not an official warrant reading or anything like that. It's just, here's the draft, let me walk you through it, and then we'll do it at the next meeting.
Thanks, fast.
Any other amendments? Hearing none, move on to correspondence and public comments. Any public comments? I don't have any public today. I do have one correspondence. I got an email from the Highgate Select Board requesting to use our building for Highgate Elementary School building for the elections on 2020. So it's something we can discuss once I don't believe we have a policy for building use yet. That's what we have to
No, but
do.
that's one that we should put in place. It shouldn't, if we are following our previous policies,
Right.
It shouldn't be an issue. The issue that will come up is about whether we have school on that day.
Which
if it's
we
for
would.
November,
Yep.
right? Because that's agreed.
Because we did vote, we, not here, but when we did the warning to allow school buildings for public use. And what you're doing is moving it out of the school building to go to recreation, or you're gonna send it to school.
They can't do it to rec department because the ice will be in by then.
So you have to close school.
So yeah, and Pat, like I mentioned at our last meeting, last couple elections we've closed school because of security.
Right. Okay.
But it's just something they've requested, and I know we don't have a policy in place yet, but something to put on our radar. Okay, on to approval of meeting minutes. We have two, so we'll probably break them up because there's a little adjustments. So first, I'll start with a motion to accept September 3rd minutes.
I'll move those.
A second.
I'll second.
There is one section that got adjusted, was under the VSBA, page 1 and page 2. They added, I just lost it, Sue Keglowski.
Yep. at last week.
Yeah, that's not
Susan
bad.
Wilson.
Yeah, added their names just to clarify. Any other changes for September 3rd?
I voiced a question, I won't say it was a concern last time, but it's been addressed, so.
At the top of page 3, there's a comment that I made which is attributed to Jay, I believe.
Jay comment, why would we?
Yeah.
Oh, you said that?
I said
Okay, so change J to Devin. Okay, all those in favor of adopting September 3rd minutes as adjusted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0. I'll entertain a motion to adopt September 17th minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion?
The only discussion, and maybe it's not discussion, but I think Jen, and I don't know, Devin, were you here last time? Or you-
I was not.
I would encourage you to read the comments or see the video of Connie Bior, longtime school board member who appeared before us in Highgate. Whether you agree with her or agree with me, I thought she did a very fine job of articulating that position.
Good point.
On page 3, there's just a couple typos after my name, it just should say Laura walked the board through, it just doesn't flow. Is that on? Page 3. Oh, Laura's blocked.
Thank you.
Any other adjustments?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting September 17th meeting minutes as adjusted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Motion carries 7-0-2. Devin and Jen abstained. Okay, on to presentations. First one, we have curriculum presentation.
Want me to do it?
All right, so it was November of last year when I presented the SBAC data from last year. And now I'm presenting this year's SBAC data based on the assessment that students completed in May of this year. So this is our English language arts data, and what you see in the column here, this is this year's scores. In grades 3 and 4, our students scored above the state average, and then for grades 5 through 9, we were like less than 10% away from the state average. You can see when we look at the trend from 2 years ago that we are on an upward trend in almost every grade level. So it's really exciting to see that. And then the other thing, if you notice here, I put the percentage of students who scored exceeded the standard, and in grades 3, 4, and 5, we had 25% or more students exceeding the standard. So it was great to be able to see that progress. This is our math data, and the exciting part of looking at this is the ones that are asterisks show where we were at or above the state average, and in 4 grade levels, we were at or above. So we are seeing very positive trends in our math data also. And in the cases where we were below the state average, it was just a few percentage points. Like here you can see our district was 42% at grade 4 and the state was 47%. So here again, you see in grade 8, we have 39% meeting proficiency, and the state it was 40%. So we are really getting closer.
What happened in grade 9?
In grade 9 here, we had last year 16%, we went up to 23%. So we still have some gaining to
We made a
do.
big jump, right?
We did make a big jump. So as long as we are seeing positive trends, it's encouraging to see that. So overall, over the past 2 years, we are definitely seeing positive trends in math. This is our disaggregated English language arts scores by gender. And again, you can see here, this is female and male, and this is our district scores. And the ones that are asterisks again show where we were at or above the state average. So in most of the grade levels, females were at or above the state average. And then for males, we had 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 6th grade where we were above the state average. So we are really close in most of them. We do see some disparities in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, so we know we have some work to do there to have our boys catch up. But mostly, for most grade levels, we are at or above the state average. And then these are again our math scores disaggregated by gender. And again, you can see all these scores, we are at or above the state average. For males here, we have 3rd grade and then 6th grade. So we do have a big difference in our 9th grade, so we know that we have some work to do there and get more of the boys to catch up. But in most of the grade levels, we are again seeing very positive trends in terms of gender. This is data that's disaggregated by free and reduced lunch. So these are the students who are not on free and reduced, and then these are free and reduced. And you can again see the ones that are asterisk, we are at or above state average. And then this is for free and reduced. So in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, our students who are on free and reduced were at or above the state average. So a lot of positive trends there. Again, we have some catching up to do here, but if you see that, it's less than 10% that we are away from the state average. So we are getting closer to closing those gaps for students.
I'm just curious, what do you think that the state gap seems even bigger than our supervisory union between the free and reduced and not free and reduced?
For this one?
It just looks like, yeah, the state, when
Yeah.
you're free and reduced, it's a lot less than, the ratios are worse than ours, it seems like.
Yeah, and I think that generally in our district, our students have done well in terms of whether they are on free and reduced or not. And we have consciously made a big difference in our MTSS system to be able to catch those students who, are struggling and make sure that we are intervening as early as possible. So, we are pleased with the changes. I think at almost every school, they've made huge changes in their MTSS system, so they're more responsive to student needs. They're intervening as soon as possible. They're putting into place some short-term interventions to really target what those students need. So there have been some really big changes. So it's exciting to see it now in our data.
Do we get this information by school?
Yes.
So this is a summary of all of our schools, including Sheldon.
Yes.
This year does include Sheldon, correct?
Yeah,
What you're showing.
this year does include Sheldon, and then from next year, we will have it just for the 3 elementary and MBU.
Is it a secret what each school does? How the students in each school do?
I really feel that that's something that's up to principals, because in the past, the way it's been is that each principal would report to their individual school board. So I'm going to leave it to their decision, how they want to be able to communicate that information.
Essentially, the work of our administrative team is to look at each principal has their school level data, and they work with their teachers about making changes based on that
Okay.
data.
All right.
Yeah.
That's good.
As opposed to, we're gonna compare school to school to
And
school.
I don't have to compare schools, but if I was a teacher in Swanton,
They
I guess I'd
absolutely,
want to look at the Swanton information. This is good for us, okay?
Right.
This is way up there somewhere in the clouds. But if I was a teacher or administrator there,
Yeah.
I want to know where we're strong and where we're weak.
they've already
Every
started that.
school,
I don't want to know, but if I was a teacher there, I want to know.
in every building, we have math and literacy leaders, and they do a detailed analysis of the data at the school. It's presented to the staff, and they do a real phenomenal job of taking that data and triangulating it with local assessment data. They look at classroom data, so they're not just looking at SBAC when they look at a student's needs. They're looking at all that and saying, how do we make sense of this, and what do we need to put in place for that student? So, yeah.
Absolutely.
These numbers
Oh, sorry.
are, that's the proficiency, the percent of students that are proficient at math or whatever.
Yes.
it's just, it's discouraging to me to think that less than half of our students are proficient, no matter what the state is doing. It seems like we're failing them if we're not even getting half of our students, proficient in these skills.
I agree. I mean, I'm listening to this and we're baselining everything against the state. Well, if the state's not doing well, then, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we should have more than,
So just to
20% of our
clarify,
kids
this
be
is,
proficient.
these are the students who get all the standards in ELA and math. They're proficient in everything. We have a huge percentage of kids who are nearly at standard. So they're very close to it, and this data doesn't give you that whole group of kids who are close to it. So of course, our job is to really work with those students to see where the gaps are and to try and close. So when the Common Core was adopted by the state of Vermont, the rigor and the standards were really high, and that's why we started off low, everybody in the state, and everybody's trying to slowly gain that kind of rigor in their instructional practices. So it was a huge bump for everybody to go from the kneecap to the SBAC. And so it is discouraging if you just look at that number, but if you look behind that and you see how many kids are nearly meeting the standard, that's a huge percentage too.
The other chart that means I like looking at, or I really trend, is the one that shows what we did last year to this year.
Yeah.
As long as we're trending upward, at least we're going in the right direction. I mean,
sure.
obviously we need to continue to improve, but at least we're trending in the right direction. Not the wrong
Exactly.
way.
Exactly.
Is SBAC now used by a majority of states? No?
I think Park is the two test manufacturers got the contracts from the federal government to and from the state to do the SBAC when the Common Core was adopted. I think most states use Park, and the SBAC consortium. I don't know if it's a quarter of the states. I'm not sure where we are, but some of the states dropped out. I don't hear anything about Vermont making any changes.
When I was on the state board, there was a big debate whether you wanted to have low standards, you get high scores, or you want to get high standards, you take your chances with low scores. And I'm just wondering if that is still in play, because it sounds like it may be. I remember that times looking at the 5 highest states, the 5 lowest states, and the 5 lowest states would go, how did they do it? They don't, and then you realize that the test they were using was not as demanding.
Well, that's one reason why the Common Core was pushed so strongly. A lot of people have feelings about it, but when you were looking at Kentucky versus Massachusetts, it was not apples to apples. Kentucky had very low standards, and kids met them easily. And states like Vermont and Massachusetts and Rhode Island, we had high standards. And yet, the shift from the grade level expectations, which were our standards previously, to the Common Core standards is a huge difference. Probably a grade level, particularly when you think about math, it's about a grade level higher in rigor. Especially once you start getting into 5th, 6th, or 7th grade. So what was usually taught in 7th grade is now taught in 6th grade, etc.
And if you talk to teachers who've been teaching for a long time, they'll tell you, right now we are what was being taught in 1st grade a few years ago. So the rigor is definitely there. And when we look at Vermont's data nationally, we do really, really well. So we know that we have really high standards here. And so the data kind of looks like, it's not that good, but I agree with what Chris said. We want to keep seeing the positive trends over the years. There may be some fluctuations. If it's within 5%, we are not that, concerned, but we want to keep seeing that progress happening. So.
Thank you.
I'm like a little bothered with the fact that you're categorizing the free lunch kids from the not free, because you're saying the free lunch kids are disadvantaged because get their parents have less money? I don't understand.
That's
I
how
think
the
are.
state
Is that the
tracks
whole
the
state
data.
tracks
The, the federal government requires us, and it's one of the areas that we are most focused on across the country, is the fact that students living in poverty, and they use free and reduced lunch as a measure of that, do not perform as well when you look at large numbers. Individuals absolutely do, but when you look at large numbers, large scale numbers, kids tend to perform less well, and education is doing them a disservice if we are not addressing that and changing our curriculum and making sure our curriculum is well articulated so that all kids have what they need so they can perform at high levels.
Julie, it's also about resources in the schools and all, I mean, it's a really complex thing. As
Oh,
to-
yes. If
Yeah.
there was a magic wand for making sure that all kids are achieving at high levels, you know, it's tough work. But we are obliged to make those comparisons, yes.
What we want to see is, can we get kids who are in poverty performing at the same level as kids who are not in poverty? Because that is one of the big discussions nationally, is are we as schools closing those achievement gaps for those students? So it is something that is tracked, and from the data that we have seen over the years, kids in our school who are in poverty do well. I have, since I was in Sheldon for 15 years, we saw many, many kids in poverty not only meet but even exceed the standard.
I was gonna say, I know a lot of kids who are in poverty that go
Absolutely,
here
yeah.
that are
Yeah.
really intelligent
Absolutely,
and
they are.
strive to
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
a lot better than some of the kids who are not in poverty. So I'm
But
just
you
a little.
can't we can't just ignore, there are huge correlations between poverty and poor performance. And as was stated, you know, individual, sure, we can all point to someone we know, but there's a huge correlation. I mean, the students that are at or
Nationally.
below poverty level, they don't
20-something
have the same
percent
sort of
lives in that.
support systems. It's just an unfortunate fact.
And like I said, in third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, you know, our disadvantaged students are doing well in math. So that's what we want to see. We want to see that all our students do well. And this is just one category by which they disaggregate data. Our science scores just came out today. So based on our fifth grade assessment, we had 37% which met the standard in proficiency. And you can see that at the state level, right here, it was also 37%. And like I was mentioning before, that's the kids who got everything. So they met all the different standards in science. And here in yellow, you see the number of kids who were nearly at standard. So we have a huge percentage of kids who are getting close to meeting all the standards, but we know we have some work to do. What was exciting to see was that this was the first time any science data was released by the state, and our elementary schools performed as well as the state level. So that was good to know. So what does this all mean? Again, we've already talked about it. We are showing positive trends in ELA and in math. There are some gender gaps compared to state averages that we need to address. And then we are also closing the gap for disadvantaged students in ELA and math. So it's definitely something we need to celebrate. Every little progress and positive steps we should be celebrating. It's a lot of credit to our principals, to our teachers, and all the work that has gone into making these positive changes. And I think we're getting better and better at being responsive to data, whether it's local or district or state level data, and really being able to provide our students not only with great first instruction, which is our priority, is to make sure they get fabulous classroom instruction, but also if they have certain needs that they need above and beyond the classroom, we are able to provide that. So I just wanted to end by, I had shared with you our continuous improvement plan, and this is our big goal in our continuous improvement plan for the district, that we are going to continue working on improving student achievement in literacy, math, and science. We are going to continue focusing our efforts on building stronger and stronger MTSS systems, and then monitoring student growth, recording progress consistently. And one of the big things we do in our district is 3 times a year, we give teachers half-day in services to literally look at their data very, very closely. So we have our first one coming up on October 17th, and each building, the coaches lead that work and really look at whatever data is currently right in front of them that they need to be looking at. And our goal is to continuously work on improving academic proficiency. So that is one of the big goals of our continuous improvement plan, and we are going to continue to make efforts to make sure our students are growing. So that's it.
Don?
Yeah.
If I could have a couple of minutes, I would just like to talk a little bit about something related to this. And I don't know if I left Julie a message or you a message, maybe both of you. But I'd like to share it with the board to see if other board members have the interest. But when winter gets here and I have more free time, I'm really concerned about our achievement levels. I'm glad we're moving up, okay? But I want to move up more and more quickly. And it takes me back, and I think many of you around the table know Jeff Benet, but probably 25 years ago, I was on a team or a panel or something with Jeff Benet, and we're talking about truancy. And I remember reading this article. This has been kind of bugging me lately because I'm a landlord, and I sometimes walk the streets of Swanton in the morning, and I see kids not going to schools down in the park. But anyway, so that article, which I haven't been able to find, was about a school in a metropolitan area. I think it was Philadelphia. Doesn't make any difference. And the teachers in the school would say, "Our kids are really doing well. What's wrong with these tests?" Well, you know what they found out? The students that come to school every day, they got the instruction with highly trained professionals like we had, did well. But there were a number of students that didn't come to school very much. And I think if you look at the attendance now, I don't know about the elementary schools, but that's what I want to work on.
And I do have that for you in our newsletter.
And I'm not out trying to
Yeah.
get somebody in trouble or prove we aren't doing it. But if you don't come to school,
Right.
and they're in geometry and you're doing certain theorems and they show up on the test, you might be a bright kid. And I think of it because as tonight we had that wonderful presentation in ag. I think one of the things those students are learning, if you don't come to work, you don't get the job done. You don't feed the pigs. You don't clean the stalls. And I think that's a very, very important thing that we're missing. And so, you know, all the teacher training we're doing is wonderful. And all the things you're promoting is wonderful. But if and on a given day, we're missing 10 or 15% of the kids, that has to impact the scores. So anyway, that's going to be my little challenge this winter. And if anybody's interested in it, they can let me know and you can work with me. If you don't care, that's fine too.
I have asked Jeff to come and do a presentation on what the truancy panel process is.
Good.
I did include our attendance
Yeah.
data
That looked pretty good.
in the newsletter
Okay.
for you,
Good.
as you had requested. But I do think, you know, most of our kids come. Those who don't, that get at that 10, 20 and beyond days out of school, that's a pervasive issue in our county. And we have a whole process as a county that includes state's attorney's office. And I think it'd be great for the board to hear that from Jeff, who's our truancy panel representative.
I think it should be
Yes, they need to be here.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
no, I want it from the horse's mouth.
Okay.
So I think
All right.
that would be very important to do.
Any other questions or comments about the presentation?
Yeah, Chris, the whole presentation was great. I liked it. My concerns about the 9th grade. My kid isn't there yet, but the numbers were kind of alarming, you know, that they were so low compared. And as we were looking at them, 7th, 8th, and then you get to 9th and it's like a big bucket. So I'm kind of concerned about that going forward, because that's first year of high school. I mean, that's the foundation. So I just wondered if there was any push, something more that's going to happen to bring those scores or up.
I'm gonna defer to Jen, who is our curriculum person at the high school, to talk to you about that.
Sure. So the SBAC test we moved to grade 9, not this past year, but the year before. And so we are still working on identifying what's on the test. In some ways, that's part of the concern. We have put a lot of supports in grade 9 for math. We have new curriculum resources. We have a grade 9 math interventionist that's focused exclusively on algebra and supporting students in algebra. And she works with identified students based on a screener that we use, 45 minutes every other day, the students that she's identified. She also pushes into the regular classroom to help support students. This year we've also added a math coach who is working with teachers to improve their practice, and she's co-teaching in the geometry class to really provide modeling for best instruction. We have many of our 9th graders enrolled in geometry because they accelerate through algebra as 8th graders. And it's not an excuse, but the 9th grade SBAC test is very algebra heavy and doesn't focus a lot on geometry. So this year we're gonna make sure to increase the review that we provide for our geometry students ahead of the test, because they haven't necessarily used those algebra skills recently. The other piece that we've added this year is we have a new flexible intervention block that happens every day for 30 minutes, and teachers select students to come and call back to their classrooms. They work with about 8 of them at a time on the specific skills that they've been working on in class to do reteaching and reassessing when they notice that students need more. So we're working on it, and we're hoping to make significant gains this year. The other piece that I'm excited about is that my algebra team is intact for the first time for 3 years in a row. So we've had high turnover in high school mathematics, so the fact that I have the same 2 algebra teachers for 3 years in a row is exciting. It means that we can,
It's a big deal.
we have a foundation to work with.
Yeah. Okay, it just kind of stuck out.
Oh,
Absolutely.
we're concerned about it too, absolutely.
Any other comments, questions? Hearing none, we can, thank you very much. We can move on to the update from the MVU administration.
Too many tabs open. And none of you want to read my email. This one?
So, since we last met with you in September, it's been a busy September and early October, and at MVU. We had our 5th homecoming week, I believe, this year, which was a spirit week. Had many high school and middle school athletic events, many unusual lights. There was a school pep rally, parade, dance, fireworks, a lot of events to celebrate school spirit. And it was an excellent opportunity for students to get involved with the school pride that we're trying to instill. Also, during the same week, we ended the week with our Hall of Fame induction. So we inducted 3 new members to the News Hall of Fame and celebrated their achievements since they graduated from NVU, and our upperclassmen were able to attend that ceremony and listen to the inductees talk about their accomplishments and how NVU helped shape those. MVU and the school district in general received in the springtime equity literacy grant from the Agency of Education. This was a competitive grant. We received $26,000 to develop equity literacy within our faculty. And we are partnering with our Abenaki community and a trainer named Paul Gorski, who is here for 2 days in September to provide our initial training. The model is a train-the-trainer model, so our school's diversity, equity, and inclusion committee will receive training from Paul Gorski to then train the rest of the faculty. In February, we'll be joined by teacher leaders from Sheldon and Swanton as well to receive this training. Just last week, we were joined by Liz Mira, who is a professional developer for science, and she focuses on the integration of the next generation science standards into curriculum. So she works with us usually 2 days at a time. We do data snaps, we walk through science classrooms, and we take data about the practices that we see and give feedback to teachers. We are focused on looking for the integration of the new standards, student discourse, that students are talking about their thinking and acting as scientists. And we also look for evidence of anchoring phenomena. So anchoring phenomena is unique situations that might spark curiosity and kind of anchor the unit, so the students would inquire about. The following day and a half, Liz meets with data teams, our grade level teams, to plan and reflect on their own practice and improve their practice. Next week, we are joined, no, the week after, excuse me, on October 14th and 15th, we're joined by Kathy Fendler from Teachers Development Group for our Math Studio training, which we very much enjoy and has made a huge impact on our teaching. We again go in with data snaps, we give feedback to teachers, and then they meet and they do very intense lesson planning. They go into the classroom and teach mini lessons right away, side by side with the consultant, and then give feedback and debrief. And that process has been very helpful for our teachers. Just this weekend, our senior girls participated in our Powder Cup game, and a great deal of money. How much money, Jay? You must know better than I. We're not there yet. We're still collecting. So each year, MVU senior girls play BFA in an Under the Lights game at Collins Curley flag football, and money is raised from Tecumseh and the Jim Bashaw Fund. It was a rainy night, but I know that it was still great. And then some events that are coming up in October. We have parent conferences in about a week and a half. Middle school sports awards nights, concerts, high school sports nights. And Jay has, I'll let him speak to it, the last meeting.
Coming around here now, the board had asked for information and data relating to office discipline referrals during the first month to 5 weeks of the year. Thanks to Dan Palmer in the middle school and Steve Messier in the student management office in the high school. We've got some information coming around to you. In particular, you have wanted to know how the new cell phone practice was going. And I would say overall it's going very, very well. In the middle school, you can see that there are only 9 violations altogether. Remember, of course, they started last year during the second half of the year. In the high school, day one was a little bit problematic, but after day one, it's been pretty smooth sailing. with an average of about 3 violations a day over the last 4 weeks. The number of office referrals, the ODR, office discipline referrals, you can see the middle school is down appreciably from 2018. In the high school, our numbers are actually up a little bit, but if you pull out the 31 referrals that have been for multiple cell phone violations, that brings it down to a total of 74, which pretty much puts us right in line with where we were a year ago. One of the interesting comments that Steve shared with me the other day when he gave me this information was in grade 9, where last year as 8th graders, they were part of the new practice with cell phones for the second half of the year. We've had only 1 multiple violator. So clearly, anecdotally, I think people would tell you that we're certainly trending in the right direction. Obviously, as you have probably heard, this is a practice that's going on literally throughout the state.
It is.
In one way, shape, or form. It's just over. I will say that the amount of volume in the commons during lunch has increased tremendously this year because they now have to talk to one another instead of getting on their phones. But we'll overcome that. It's a small sacrifice.
I'll have to say that I know a young man that was very unhappy about this policy, and he complained about it. And I didn't hear the complaints after the first week anymore, and I heard what Jay had just said about it being louder in the cafeteria. So I asked about it a week or so ago, and he said lunchtime is a lot more fun. So I think they're adjusting.
And I agree, Maple Run is having the same issues. A lot of parents are having issues with it, more so because what if I need to get a hold of my kid? Well, you need to go through other channels.
Yeah.
Really.
What did
Call
you
the
do?
office.
What did you
That's
do
it.
before cell phones?
I mean, and
They're in school.
like I said, I work right next to people that are complaining about this whole policy, but I'm all for it.
I don't know if you have any questions. Now, if you do, we'll try to answer them.
Jay, I'm very pleased that you and Dan stepped up and are doing it school-wide. I know we started out, which was the way we started out, but as I followed this in the newspaper and other places, there are schools where they say the teacher determines in his or her classroom. And I would think that would be an absolute nightmare.
Our experience, I guess I would say, knowing our students, is that is not going to work.
No,
I wouldn't think it would work.
no.
They're great kids, but if you give them that much, they're going to take a little bit.
It's good. It's good. I bet some students appreciate it too.
Yeah, some.
They haven't told us that.
We'll never admit it.
But they have been asking for things like chess and cards and games to play when they have study hall or downtime. It's
Good.
nice to see them interacting in ways that we haven't seen for a little while.
Awesome.
That's good news.
Without a football.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll move on to new business. First one is budget process overview.
So we wanted to, and Laura will jump right in here. We've started to have conversations about what, bless you, what budget will, what our process will look like as a single district. We were just having conversations today. This is the time of year when service plan is due, which sort of kicks off the budget season anyway. Service plan is the special ed budget that's submitted to the state. It's particularly difficult this year because the state is giving us advice with no direction, but you can't do it the way you used to, but we don't know how to answer the questions. So we've been having a lot of beginning meetings talking about budget. Our next steps will be meetings of some departments like special ed, like early childhood, like technology, like facilities management, bringing those budgets together, talking about priorities. And then Laura and I will start meeting with individual principals on those topics and bringing them. Does this look right to you? What are your priorities? As an admin team, a larger admin team, we're going to be looking at The cross-district issues of priorities, most importantly would be staffing. Are there vacancies? Do we fill them? Can we fill it a different way? Where, what are the patterns? Which should we be doing? Because my sense from this board, although you haven't given us formal direction, is that you are looking for an incredibly responsible budget this year. And that what I have heard is that we need to be particularly careful and we need to be showing that we're efficient. So we are going to then bring to you a first draft that will have gone through that process. And we'll be looking very carefully at every position and whether it's needed or whether through attrition, we can look at either filling it differently or not filling it. And we will weigh all of those things as an administrative team. And money isn't the only thing you look at. You look at how, what's the quality of service we're giving to our kids. So it's a balance of that. Do you have more to add to that, Laura?
No, that was perfect.
As a board member who likes to speak his mind, I would strongly encourage you with the 20% of the budget, which basically benefits the operation of the school other than personnel, that you'll be very lenient. I think we're making some good progress. I'm speaking from my work at MVU. I think we're making some very good progress. I'd hate to see us cut 1,000 or 2 or 5 or 10,000 out of something that's really important to keep us on the right track in the schools. I think most of us have been around, know about 80% of your budget is personnel and the salaries and benefits that go with them. And I know we're going to be in probably tough negotiations, but I won't pursue it tonight because I think that you guys have a plan. But I think when push comes to shove, everybody may vote differently, but I'm going to vote for a budget that's going to keep our progress going upward in the schools for the students.
That's really good to hear.
Personnel may suffer a little bit for short term.
Well, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that we've been notified that our insurance premiums, no matter what the outcome of the statewide commission, that the premiums are looking at a 12 to 14% increase.
Sure.
So that's a right out of the gate.
Not 18? Not 18?
No, not 18.
Okay.
No,
Still.
12 to 14.
It's still.
It's still,
Yeah.
still not a nice number.
Yeah.
Especially since they went up so much last year.
Yeah.
And the year before.
And the year before.
Right. That was with 18.
These new cheap, these less expensive plans that they came out with weren't quite financially sound, so.
Possibly come. But, so that's our overall process. And I just wanted to make sure we were transparent about what, and I know principals want to know, what are we doing? What are we doing together? What are we doing separately? So.
Very good. Any other comments on budget process? Hearing none, we'll move on to tractor and zero-turn lease agreement.
Okay, so Highgate had budgeted for the purchase of a new tractor. Scott Martin, the new facility director, did a lot of research and I think did a really nice job reviewing the needs of the school, and he was actually able to save some money from what was budgeted. So he's actually only purchasing 2 pieces of equipment, a tractor and a mower, rather than a larger scale tractor, which would have been about $6,000 more to accomplish the same work. I solicited lease rates from 3 different banks: Gorham Bank 3.26%, Municipal Leasing Company 5.99%, and John Deere 4.95% on that equipment. And so my recommendation would be to award that to Gorham Bank at the 3.26%. Annual payment will be about $150 less than what we budgeted.
And you were able to loan the lease for both pieces of equipment?
Both pieces, yep, to put it together. Yep.
So I'll entertain a motion to accept Gorham's 3.26 interest rate.
And to allow you to sign. Please.
And allow the board chair to sign.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Eric.
So
Discussion.
Where do we push it? Okay, has it been seconded?
Yes.
Where do we purchase the equipment?
We already have.
Uh,
The equipment has been purchased.
And so do we know the vendor and how we got
Yes.
there?
He solicited quotes for each, about more than 3 for each piece of equipment, but it wasn't just based on price. It was the needs of the school as well. He ended up purchasing the zero turn from CCR Sales and Service and the mower from John Deere. The tractor from John
Yeah,
Deere,
I was gonna
excuse
say,
me,
you got the
tractor, yeah.
So what about the current equipment?
I believe he traded the current tractor in for the new tractor.
Okay.
That was part of the savings.
Okay, cool.
So, what are the sizes of this equipment?
The mower, I'm not sure engine horsepower, he didn't tell me that part, but the mower is a 60-inch zero turn, something much more efficient than they had before.
It's an industrial size.
Yes,
not
an industrial, yep. And then he upgraded the tractor from like a subcompact residential style more to a compact commercial landscape grade.
I guess what I'd appreciated as a school board member is that he would have sent us a fact sheet saying, this is what I got for a tractor, this is what I got for a mower, you know, that type of thing. I'm not trying to micromanage, but I think at previous board levels, we've had some sense, and I don't want to promote tonight that growth of concept, but at the same time, I think that's been important, at least to the MVU board, right here, some of the others. So, you know, it's nice that you bring the numbers, but it'd been nice if we'd had a sheet from the person who was involved in the purchasing saying maybe what he looked at, what he's recommending, and then I don't know, but that's where I'm sitting.
Even if it was already approved, like it was already approved to spend the money on that equipment.
It was, yes,
Right.
budgeted for. Yeah.
Right.
It
So
was what?
it was budgeted for and approved for that.
It was budgeted for, I'm not sure budgeted for approve something.
Well, if we set aside $20,000 for the purpose of getting,
I guess it's a
Right,
matter of your
right.
philosophy as a board member. I just would have liked to have seen the information before we bought the lawnmower. Because it probably wouldn't have changed the outcome one bit.
It'd certainly be nice to know what we're approving. To have the fact sheet and
it
have
was already
information.
approved.
You're approving the financing,
In-
that's what I'm asking for.
In fairness to Scott, he did approach me about it. We talked about it. When we originally discussed this at the Highgate board level, it was to buy a tractor, not 2 pieces of equipment. He wanted to go a different route, as in a zero turn mower and a smaller tractor. He asked me if it was all right as long as he stayed within what was budgeted. And in fact, he was planning on spending less, which he did. So, you know, I said that it was all right as long as he stayed within his budget and he could justify what he was getting.
Would it be helpful if we just always had a philosophy that local is better, all things considered? I mean, I know it doesn't take care of everything, but at least it's something we're all philosophically agreed to.
Well, this was approved as part of the Highgate board, right? Is that what you're saying?
It was the Highgate board put it in front of this board and we put it in the budget.
I meant for going forward. I don't mean for this one. I just mean
Right, I just feel like that's a
philosophically.
different circumstance because it came from a board that no longer exists.
Yeah, I think in transition year, we're gonna see a lot, but I think this board has to determine how they view things, because I think probably with 4 boards around the table, there were 4 different ways of doing things.
Exactly.
You know, I don't mind being wrong, but I just would have, it'd been nice to have had a fact sheet from the person that was buying it. Not that we'd have probably blocked it or changed it or anything, but it would have been nice to have had it.
And are you saying on any equipment purchase or above a certain dollar amount or?
Well, I think that's what we need to wrestle with when we do the budget. I think we need to be clear when we buy the budget. If you're spending $25,000, $30,000 or whatever the benchmark is, I've seen places where it was over $5,000, but I think we just need to, as a group, determine what we want. And if the group says, hey, once it's in the budget, it's yours to spend, that's fine. That's not the way I would do it, but if that's what the board wants. But I think this transition year is always going to be difficult because, you know, really, it was in Highgate budget, it came to our budget. Your board was still probably active when the discussion occurred. He came on new. They're all good things. But anyway, I just have to share my thoughts so that when somebody asks us about it, we don't have all the answers, but we should be able to have it.
Is it possible to have the facility director present at the meetings for each school we go to?
We are planning on doing that for the various tours. So you had Paul Gregoire here when you toured MU, and you will have future presentations from him and updates. Next board meeting in Swanton, Jason Butler will be there. Actually, Jason's coming for executive session because of an issue. But yes, we'll
And,
absolutely be doing that.
And Scott was
that
at
high?
a Higgins tour.
And I'm very impressed.
No, I remember, but going forward, when we go to the
Yes,
different schools.
that is something that, yes.
Yes, something we've discussed.
Because that would be a good topic to discuss, these types of things. If there's a new piece of equipment, then it needs to be bought, then it's brought to the board, you know,
I
like
guess
Don
we still
says.
need to talk about, you know, what level of detail the board wants to manage and what level of detail the superintendent and business manager and administrators manage, and when is that number? Is it, you know, because I think your facilities folks purchase lots of things that cost $25,000, right? Whether it's lighting projects, of course, the Swanton board knew that was happening. So again, I think when there are big projects, if you know it's happening, then it's not a surprise. So I think we still have to have that conversation
Yeah,
about,
I do
you know.
too. And I didn't plan to bring it up tonight, but it was a good opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of times what you see is based on the dollar amount, you'll give different groups or individuals the authority to make that approval.
Levels.
Based on level, so maybe it's, you know, the principal, the superintendent, and then ultimately the board, and you might draw 3 lines. Because even if it's budgeted, you know, I think we still need the opportunity. The budget's created, you know, a year ago, basically. Well, not this time around, I guess, but if we need to change course on these significant items, we need the ability to do that. So I think, Don, you raise a very good point.
Based on necessity.
Well, that budget isn't very transparent, so I'd like to see more details behind it.
Yeah.
We'll have to just really clarify what that means, because, you know, we make a lot of purchases, and I totally agree with everything you're saying, so I'm not trying to argue the point, but we make a lot of purchases over 5, 10, 20.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of times there's
$37 million budget.
You know, a lot of times it's like a capital acquisition policy. So
right.
we're not talking about a big supply order. We're talking about a fixed piece of equipment or renovation, something
Something
like
that
that.
depreciates.
I think as we build budgets, we'll be pretty easy to identify those things that hit a certain market or a certain process. You know, a driver ed car, good example. You know, when we reach driver ed car, you know, I've been around on that. But anyway, I said enough for tonight, but let's stay with it.
I guess it doesn't help now, but I do have the quotes here if anybody wants to see them, just to see the diligence that was done on Scott's part. So, I mean, if anybody does want to review them, I did bring it with me.
Okay, so I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of allowing the board chair to sign the agreement from Gorham for 3.26, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0.
Chris, you'll have to sign these as well.
Yep. Okay, on to,
Yes.
we have a real estate legal issue. We need a finding for executive session.
At the end of the meeting.
At the end of the meeting,
Right.
we're not gonna go to executive now. Just need the motion for a finding, which would be, well, just what it is, a real estate legal issue. So, we vote on the finding, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay,
Somebody,
so I need a motion,
Sure, I'll make the motion.
second,
Second.
discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of, the finding for executive session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Okay, early draft for school choice policy.
The non-resident tuition will be next time, if they
yes,
submit a letter.
the request, was made informally, and I told them how it needed to be made, and they haven't followed up, so I assume they're gonna come to it again. So what you're getting now is a very early, I almost wrote, it says draft on the front, but I almost wrote very drafty. You all reviewed policies from other school districts. The administrative team reviewed closely the ones that were not restrictive. You talked, there were some that said no school choice at all, except in emergencies. So we reviewed, I think, 6 different policies as an administrative team and had a very lengthy discussion about the issues of concern and the things that they wanted to make sure were in such a policy. This again is not a reading, this is a draft. I'm gonna go through what we put in here, and you can give, any feedback in the moment, and you can also give me feedback after you've had time to sit with it. And then I will bring a more formal draft for a first reading, and then we'll go through the formal feedback process on that. This is 2 parts because I put the procedures, again, the board does not adopt procedures, it only adopts the policy, but you're gonna wanna know what the procedures are. The model is basically Champlain Valley School District's model, so the preamble language about that, to accommodate occasions when students might benefit from placement in a school outside a K-6 grade student's town of residence. It's the policy of the school district to offer students the option to enroll in a school of their choice within the district. Processes for intra-district choice of school will be guided by the needs of students, space availability, and existing resources. This process is one that the superintendent and all of the policies that I've read have it being at the superintendent level. And that the guidelines, and these were mostly the ones that were on that Champlain Valley model, that the requests will be based on space availability and with the goal of creating balanced class sizes in all schools. Regardless of residence, every family will have an opportunity, so that's that idea of equity of access, that it's a transparent process and published. That transportation will be provided for students attending school within their town of residence. For students choosing to attend a school in a neighboring town, transportation is not provided by the Missisquoi Valley School District. Now, you'll see in this draft, there's a period there, and then, of course, I have the color version, and yours didn't come in color. But I have in red on my copy, unless the existing bus route passes the school's residence, the child's residence, on the way to or from the choice school, and there's sufficient space on the bus. So, if the bus is going by, and there's room on that bus, that we could make an allowance for that. I think that we saw in a portion of the school choice that was not part of the Champlain Valley one, but it was in some of the others. And the administrators tended to look favorably about that one. Younger siblings entering school after a child who's exercised choice may attend the same school as his or her sibling, providing there is space available in the grade at the school of choice. Champlain Valley's didn't have that providing language. That was from a different school policy. We have, a big elementary school, medium-sized elementary school, and a smaller elementary school. We can't necessarily, we have to make sure that space is available in the grade.
I don't know if I like that either.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
What do you mean?
What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, my thinking is that if we're saying that the older sibling, we've already given them, and then a new sibling is coming into the school.
Yeah.
It's just like they're from that town.
It's a case by
We
case.
wouldn't tell somebody in that town, we don't have enough room, we're gonna send your kid to a different school. I just don't think we should be separating families.
Well, I don't think so either. So I'm not sure. Some policies made each kid apply.
See, I think
And
once.
some say
in
once
there,
you're in, everybody's in. It's like you've moved in.
That would be my,
Yeah, I mean, Franklin's the school that's potentially could impact the most, having only one classroom per grade.
Right.
yeah.
And they deal with classes of different sizes from year to year, and they have the occasional 25 kid class, and they have to make do, and it just kind of happens at random. I mean, there was the 33 kid class that happened one time, and
Yeah, we're not.
it's not easy, but it's just kind of the random variability you deal with in schools like that.
So on my copy, that last sentence, the providing their space is red. That's the, where are we? I'd love to hear what other board members think about that sentence.
I agree with the rest of the sentiment. I feel once you allow a family in, I don't like the idea of. I think once the older siblings in, the rest has to, and that may be part of the decision process. If a family applies and it's a large family, we have to look at the impact of that when we're whether we accept the older sibling first. But once the older's in, I don't like that red part.
Were there specific concerns from the administrators that put that in, or were they strong feelings one way or another?
I don't know. Did anybody have?
Is all based on numbers, but Franklin has handled it for years, and I mean, that was the biggest concern.
Some policies had, once one's in, you're all in, that's the way it is. And others had that providing their space, so that's why it's in there to see what the board's, this is your policy. So.
I personally think, I don't have any problem with it. For
That's
one
good
thing,
to know.
I think it'd be horrible to have one family not be able to send one of their kids because they have a big family. And that would be like, you'd be discriminated against because you have a big family. And one kid might really need to go to a different school. And I also think that we have to be really careful about all three schools' numbers. We can't just adapt, like in the past, maybe we just adapted and taxes went up if you had to have a new grade, or teachers were, I think we have to take all that into account, that there might be some schools where the ratios are so high. This one's really gotten me, the ratios. I think that we have to think of all the kids, and we know that smaller ratios typically give you better classroom experience.
We have to stay within,
The state.
the education quality standards, and we have to have a buffer.
It's a safety net. I mean,
Yeah.
removing that sentence, we have no real leg to stand on if it comes up and they want to add another student. Yeah, sure. It's been sort of this is what it is, but if it's something that we could have control over the ebb and flow of it, I think that's gonna make it more contentious than, just more people are moving here, that's great. It's a lot different if they're not living in that town, and I just think it's an important safety net, so I think it should stay.
I was pleased to see you had an April 1st deadline, because I'm going to tell you, I think this is going to take some time. I don't mean the policy.
Right.
Once the application says it's going to take some time. I think Chris made an excellent point. Somebody applies and the older one, there are 5 students. I think you got to look at that student, but you got to look at long range.
Gonna look at the package and the numbers. What you won't see in here is a number like 10. Because that actually is very deceptive, because the siblings are automatic. Maple Run has a policy where if I live in one of the towns, I can just have my kids go anywhere I want. And a lot of teachers use that policy, and it's not always to teach in the school, to attend the school they teach. It may just be, well, we like this for whatever reason. And that's everyone from custodians to administrators. So that's a lot of school choice that's not counted in their 10, right? And I think it's important that we have that window. If we had a rolling time, like anytime someone applies, it's fine, then we can't plan for what you're talking about. If we have a class that's, we look at the applications in April and we see that a class could potentially be getting full, we can have conversations about what that looks like, and we can deny or move resources. It's not just class sizes, because frankly, I mean, Dina and I were just talking the other day about this, and Joyce and I today. It's not like if we moved a teacher to Franklin, there'd be a place for the classroom. And it's not just about classroom sizes. Swanton's in the same, there's no extra space to have 3 more classrooms. So you have to really look at your numbers. You have to allow for a buffer for kids who will move in over the school year. So you can't load it up to the capacity either. You have to have wiggle room so that you're doing that. And you have to think about special education, interventionists, para-ed, all of those other resources that loading up schools with 2 capacity every classroom. So I don't expect that we're going to have that issue anyway, but we need to have a policy that gives us that flexibility.
I think we need to be careful what kind of provisions we're putting in here, because we could violate the language and statute.
Violent what? I'm sorry?
Statute language.
Nothing in here would violate anything.
You don't think so?
Yeah, I'm very sure. We're also
I think
having a
what we're
line
doing, I
process.
think the whole sibling thing might be, I don't know, I think that's teetering on. I think it's pushing it by putting that in there.
But so that they can come, or which way?
That providing their space available.
Right. Well, there have been adopted policies across the state that do it both ways. They either restrict or they have it wide open.
What statute?
Prior to Act 46.
As part
My
of.
concerns about the shoe-ins. I mean, just because. And the siblings are shoe-ins. I just.
Every policy I saw.
On the family.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I understand.
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
No, I
Providing
get
a
that.
family, I mean, if they don't,
Then they should
for
move to
whatever
where they
reason,
want to go
that's
put their kid in school. Like, it's not, I'm sorry. If I really want my kids to go to Franklin, I'll move to Franklin. And I'm sorry,
There's a
I
lot of
think.
considerations. There's a
Well,
lot of
right,
considerations.
but we have
besides
limited
where to
school
live.
choice, and there has to be
Yeah.
limits.
Like if you have
to
one
it,
kid
or
that
else-
needs it,
Yeah,
you'd be willing to have your other 2 go where you live and have the one kid go.
yeah, I
If they
just
need
feel
it.
like it's not doors wide open. I don't think
Okay,
that's
so
smart.
what if there isn't room available? What do you do then?
They go to their school where they live.
Like, that's where their playmates will be for the most part.
I don't know
I think
that it
we
happens
make the
very often.
accommodations.
So, but I think it's important to have the discussion now about
Yeah.
what the will of the board. I also don't want to, worry about a thing that might never happen too much. But I know that school districts that have done it have not had, there's a chunk of people that want to exercise school choice, but most people want to attend the school where they live, and that's convenient for them.
I know people feel really strongly that the whole family should be able to go. However, I think that people are involved in making some of this decision, and I would hate to see it set up so that families with a lot of kids would be not even consciously,
Right.
but there might be some concern, discrimination, without even being aware of it. Because we are going to worry about ebb and flow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what
I
we're
think
going to
that's
do.
where, when you have a process that's more lottery based, then you're picking out like the whole family application, and then you're looking at placing those.
I'm struggling to understand how we would, if there was a policy in place that didn't have that red sentence in it, how that would discriminate against a larger family. I don't understand that, because I almost would argue to the other extent that if you're splitting up a family, that could be discrimination in another way. I mean, if there's a reason that, use my family as an example, I wanted my oldest child to go to a different school, well, chances are that reason is going to trickle down through my rest of my children. So I would rather it be all or nothing, and if it was me. I'm failing to understand the discrimination part of that.
I'm thinking that ultimately, this set of criteria I don't think we have based, like, okay, if there's less than 24 kids, then you can add a person. I think there's going to be some subjective going into it when that first kid gets involved. And if you know that there's a family that has 6 kids, let's say, you might be, I don't know, this is going to open up a Pandora's box. We're going to have 6
you can't
kids.
really do that. You have to be blind when you choose kids.
Okay.
So you just, it's,
It was
you
stated that it should be considered, that somebody stated
I did.
earlier.
Yeah.
That
I mean, it might be something you would consider. I don't know. I mean,
I do think the providing their space available would look something like this. If you have, you're aware as superintendent by working with the principals what the estimated class sizes, and they're just estimates, because talk to any of these folks and they'll tell you what the week before school start looks like. So you know, there's space. I can accept 3 kids into 3rd grade in Swamp, for example. And so you sort out by grade and school of choice, and you pick according to those numbers of how many seats available that you have. And you do that in a blind manner. And if you have somebody who's got a 3rd grader and a kindergartner, and so I could see where if kindergarten was at the max, then you could have a conversation with the parent. You could say, well, we can easily fit in the 3rd grader, but we can't necessarily fit in the kindergartner. You know, what does that mean for you? Are you going to pull your whole, at this time, we don't have the room. We're not going to add a classroom, right? And we're not, but if the family had, you're right, if the family had moved in. But kids are still going to move in. So that's where we are really, there's a tension. The process really needs to wrap up for the next year so you can make adjustments where you're able to.
Couldn't they be given priority? I mean, I remember reading that somewhere that siblings will have
getting
priority. Doesn't mean they definitely get to go, but they will be given priority. That's kind of an in-between.
Would that phrase feel better in that part of the policy?
That's a little different scenario,
Yeah.
because you haven't assigned anybody yet.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of, okay, we put this person in, or this student in 3rd grade in one school from another town. When they get to 6th grade, all of a sudden they've got somebody that's coming into kindergarten.
Right.
Oh, there's not enough room for kindergarten. You can't go to
Consideration.
kindergarten.
Consideration.
Yeah.
This is a big word. I just,
So it really is about, this is why it's a board policy, where procedures, how I choose things and what the dates are,
Yeah.
that's an administrative piece. If the board, and that's why we're not gonna solve it today.
Right.
It sounds like this is a big one for the board to wrestle with. Do you have, if you've got siblings, come one, come all. If you've got siblings, priority will be given to siblings, or consideration if, you know, if
Not
space is
priority.
available. So that's what you all have to work out.
see, I struggle with if we leave the sentence in, provided there's space. So potentially we could have one sibling, we say yes, one sibling, we say no.
Right.
But then the very next one is once the student's accepted, they don't need to reapply. Well, let's say the student we accepted the next year, there's a big bubble, people move into that town and now there's not room for them. We're not going to boot them out, but we made that same rationale, we wouldn't let their sibling in. So I struggle with,
But at that point, that's more detrimental to the student. The
Yeah.
student hasn't started there. They don't have that relationship with the teachers, with their peers. If they're going there for a year and then they get booted
Yeah,
to
that
a
would be-
school that they've been disconnected from, I feel like that's detrimental to the kid at that point.
I would agree with that.
There was only one policy that I saw that you had to apply every year. And that may be the circumstance of the size of the school, right? It may be
Yeah.
that they have real small schools and they're not sure whether they felt like it had to be a year by year thing. All the rest, I never saw a process that didn't say, you know, you're in, you're in. One of the bigger worries for the administrative team was school choice hopping. So if you make a choice to go to Highgate, you're going to Highgate for the school year. And if you want to go back to your home school the next school year, you can notify us of that. I don't think, some actually have that you have to apply to go back to your school
Yeah.
of residence,
Yes.
which I think is,
I actually like that.
I do too.
If you're gonna apply, then yeah, make it become your new
For the
home
year.
school.
right.
For the
And
year.
if you want to change it from there, then you're the same boat as everybody else who wants to go to that.
Right, if you've got the room and you can get in, you have to reapply. I
And that's
totally
one where
agree
I do want to check, because
with that. Yeah.
it's your school of residence.
Right.
So if it's where I mean, although the whole district is the district of residence and we all pay taxes to the whole, so I think that's okay, and I did see that in some policies, but I wasn't really sure about that. So that's really great feedback.
That'd be a good
I
court
like it.
case, I'd take that.
So transfer, because the real concern is, you know, let's say I really just don't like this particular third grade. So I'm gonna school choice over here, and then I'm gonna go over to Swanton the next year, and then
Start
I'm
picking
gonna.
teachers.
It's a
And
nightmare.
I don't expect that would happen more than once in a,
No, I've
the
had.
rarity, but, you know, the administrators were concerned that if you're in, it's your new home school, as you described.
Right.
Yeah.
Am I understanding the procedure part of this, that the superintendent would make the decision, not the board?
Yes, and every single policy I read, it is the final decision of the superintendent, and that way you're not appealing everything to the board about how my circumstances are more unique than others, and even the extraordinary circumstances. So obviously there should be, and every policy I saw, even the ones that didn't allow for school choice generally, if there's an extraordinary life circumstance and that isn't, but I really like it over here. But if there's an extraordinary life circumstance,
Yeah.
that it could be considered, and it would be with administrative input,
Sure.
and that decision's final. I mean, that is gonna keep everything at
So
the
the
administrator.
board then would only get involved if the parents feel that the administrator has violated the policy.
Yes.
I
Absolutely.
like that.
And sometimes, I think in Maple Run, they actually had a board member present for part of the lottery, you know, just to see what it looked like.
Does it say anywhere in here that they can appeal the superintendent's decision?
Nope.
Okay. And I don't mean appeal just because they don't like it, but would there be grounds for appeal?
Well, as Devin just
Yeah.
described it, I think if a parent felt the superintendent was not following the policy,
Okay. So they should,
just as if somebody felt that any policy was not being followed by the superintendent.
so that should be noted then in the policy.
So
Julie, is this something we can, like with the other policies where we sort of all gave our feedback
Yes,
and
absolutely.
compiled? 'Cause I feel
So
like
this
we
is,
could go
as I
on
said,
and
this
on.
is I took everyone's feedback and threw it all together. I took bits of different school district policies that seemed to fit what the administrator's concerns were. And what you're saying is extra feedback that is really helpful because this is your policy. The only other things that I wanted to mention were on the back side of it, and that was making sure we reference that it's not for pre-K. Pre-K has its own portability, school choice. We don't want any confusion that if I go to Highgate for preschool, that means I'm in, because I've got a foot in the door. That's not the case. You would have to apply for before your child goes into kindergarten. And the other big one that I really want to get your sense on is those kids who move mid-year. Because that's all over the map from what I've seen. And we have a ton of that. Kids move from Highgate to Swanton, and Franklin to Highgate, and Swanton to Franklin, you know. And families, rightly so, they want to stay for the rest of the school year, which we know is best for kids, but that's not always, in the past, as you know, it has to go to the board, and then it's a matter of how close to the end of the school year it is. In a single district, it doesn't matter. So you could, like Maple Run, let them stay forever, or as long as you want. If you move from city to town, half the people move from one apartment to the other, they don't realize it's now the town and not the city. That happens all the time over there. They have very equal school sizes, so, what works for them may not work for us. But I think the administrative team, and please say if you disagree, but they were very supportive of kids staying through the end of the school year. If they want to stay beyond that, then they could apply in the transfer process. And maybe they are even given priority, I don't know, because of continuity of education. But at the very least, allowing them to stay for the rest of the school year and then apply for the next year if they want to stay. And so I'm seeing nods, but
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I like
You
it
know,
as written.
it's heartbreaking when kids are in the middle of, their fifth grade year and they've been there all along, and then, the family buys a house and, it's January and you've got to change schools. It's nice if people are able to stay. So that's good.
But it also gives them the chance, if they can't transport or whatever, they still have the option of moving to the school that they town and look at.
Absolutely.
So that
Yeah.
covers both.
Yeah.
Transportation's gonna be the elephant in the room on this.
Well, it really is up to the family.
Well, I think it's great,
you know.
but I'm just saying that it's gonna be a challenge.
It is a challenge, and I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's not really an opening of floodgates. Because families are busy and they work, and, having the school bus pick your child up is a lot easier. And people often feel very connected to the school, their hometown school. So,
Every situation is different.
absolutely, absolutely.
However, I do think it's important to bring up, and you all probably talked about this, but the economic equity issue, that some families can send their kids separately and some families can't. They might not have a car,
Yes.
or they might only have one. That does concern me,
Okay.
but I get it. Then
At this point, the language in there that it sounded as if you were supportive of is if there's room on a bus and a bus goes by there, that we could at least look at that.
or if there's a bus stop nearby.
Yeah, I think we could broaden that a little bit to existing bus
Bus stop.
stop instead
Yeah.
of just if it goes
Yeah.
past their house.
Yes, because we don't stop at
That would
every
open it up.
stop.
Because right now it says a bus route passes the child's residence, which is probably very few people who
Yeah,
have
an
different
accessible
towns bus driving by.
bus route or something.
Yes, we'll work
I
on
get
that
6 buses
language.
past my house and my kids have to walk.
Okay. This has been very helpful.
This is great.
Can I
can't believe you
just
guys did so much.
offer one thing for the board to think about? Because a lot of this policy is based around parents' choice, which I think is great. It's kind of our intention going in. The first bullet also, though, says we have the goal of creating balanced class sizes. And that strikes me as two kind of competing priorities on this policy. Would we tell a family they can't send their kids because they're in a class size that's small, and they'd be going to a school where the size is a little bigger? Is that kind of creating that conflict? So I don't know what
I don't
people's
understand.
thoughts.
Can you expand
So
that?
if you had all right, I'll pick on Franklin again, has a class of 12, and one of the parents wants to send a student to Highgate where they're 18 but there's room. Are we going to deny that because we're making the difference in class sizes
Right.
larger?
That was definitely a topic of discussion because we do have some schools that have smaller class sizes, and we have to, that's again why this policy needs timelines for the year before, so we can make adjustments if we do need to make adjustments. But that was from the Champlain Valley model, and I think it was making an emphasis on balance, as opposed to we want to empty out, and nobody wants to reduce a school so that they have very few students. That's obviously not what school choice is supposed to be about.
Right.
But
how
we did talk about that, and how do we?
many's
I
too
can't
big, right?
tell Jen that she can't, leave Swanton because their third grade class is, has only 10 kids in it. if she really wants to go to Highgate or Franklin. So
Right.
it's a tricky one, you're right.
Aren't we trying to solve two different things though with this? I mean, isn't there another solution that needs to be done there? Or another, something that needs to be looked at? If you've got 10 kids in a class in one
Yes.
school and you got 20 in another school, eventually you gotta look at that.
Again, that's why there's timelines and not just enrolling all the time. I can go, because you have to plan and you have to follow master agreements. You have to, identify where we budget and what our priorities are. But in this building, it's real, Lena,
No, I was just gonna to Devin's example, if I'm right, I think if we weren't looking at small versus big, yeah, Terry, you're bringing that up in the future, but I think your numbers were very reasonable, the 18, 19, I think as administrators, the idea of going a lot higher in some of our buildings was making us more conscientious of that. So that was the big thing. I mean, I think from a 12 to an 18, and to me, 18, there's room in there. It's when you're getting above those 20s, 25s. And then if you start at like 23, 24, depending on what's coming in over the summer. And if you're a Franklin with only one, they're all going in one place. At least in Swansea, we have the luxury. But for example, right now, our kindergarten is really at the max. Right now, number-wise, it really is. And we're thinking about next steps, like does it mean another classroom? So I think your example felt okay. I think the bigger picture is, okay, as a district, do we start looking at 10 versus 25, right? If that helps you with something like that.
It does, and it just makes me think, have we addressed that particular situation, the 24-25, with the idea of just looking at resources to try to prevent it, and maybe not explicitly state a goal of creating balanced class sizes. So I don't have an answer. I know it's one I want to think about. So.
And if I can add one thing, and maybe it's the word balanced. I mean, and this is different, I think, in Swanton and Highgate because we have more than one. I always am envious of Franklin when you have to do placement every year because it's easy. But when we look at placing kids in Swanton, we look at the word balance. That's basic numbers, that's needs, that's, it's even looking at gender, what we can do that too. So that's what we look with balance. So maybe the word balance right now is not the right one in the policy.
Or maybe it is.
and maybe class sizes, maybe the word balanced is wrong, but balanced class sizes is replaced by balanced classrooms, right? So it's not just about number.
Not numbers.
And I don't know.
Is there something in here talked about that said something about this optimal class or what did it
The
say?
state.
Education quality
And
standards.
that I had in the procedures, around, space available, and again, not saying we're going to fill our classrooms up to 25. The
That's the-
education quality standards say from 4th through 12th grade, 25 is okay. But I don't know that we want that necessarily. And I don't know that that's gonna happen either. But for example, Dina right now has kindergarten that may be above quality standards for numbers, just over. So, we're certainly not, if 3 kids move in, then we look at what we need to do, which is I think where they're at right now. But if we added school choice on top of that, that would be a problem, and that would have to be a discussion about do we shift resources, not add, but shift, because it has to be about the shift.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you, that was a lot, but it was very helpful. And then when I bring it back, you should see some of that input reflected.
So next steps will be the surveys as far as the board's concerned, or
We'll do a first reading,
And then the surveys.
and put out you'll see my next draft. It's essentially the first reading, and then we warn it and get feedback.
I think early on we talked about the warning of it. Probably needs to be warned a little more extensively than just a regular normal policy, not a regular policy.
Put it on the website, I mean, not
I'm
just in the
thinking
policy
that, you know,
section.
we have policies, they've been around.
Yeah.
Many of our grandparents remember the policy when they were in school, it's kind of boilerplate, we tinker with it depending what the legislature does, but this is a pretty big step, so anything we can do. And by the way, it was in the messenger. It was in
I
the
did
block,
see it, checked,
right there.
I checked it.
She checked it.
Separate space, but it was there,
Yeah.
that's good.
Well, I told them twice, so I think they're getting the message. And I said it was our school board that's been bringing it to, presenting it at the board meeting, so they apologized for not putting it in.
A star for the messenger, and period.
So thank you for all that.
Okay, we'll move on to old business and we'll start with negotiations update.
So, the association and I exchanged letters saying that we want to open negotiations. This week we will email you, for, scheduling, negotiations committee meetings. Sorry that we didn't do that before. I don't know, I mean, if you want to discuss that further, I think you would want to have a finding for executive session, to discuss it more in terms of that would be strategy or the impact of state healthcare negotiations on anything. So I don't know, I wanted to make sure you knew that we did do that and that we have met the deadline for saying that we're opening negotiations. Our master agreement states that we need to exchange proposals before November 15th.
To me, it seems like maybe next time we meet might be a better time to when we have more information about going into
And
that.
we'll schedule committee meetings.
I want to thank Julie and Pierrette for, I think everybody got the VSBA newsletter and then they got information from your office
Yes.
on what's happening with that whole negotiations over healthcare. If you didn't get it, it came in the newsletter that you should have gotten, but I asked Pierrette and Julie if they would just send it out as a separate.
It's in the folder.
Right.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a big one.
It will be.
Okay, speaking of the VSBA, next agenda is VSBA membership discussion. As far as the Vermont Alliance, Julie and I discussed whether to invite, well, as with the email that was passed out last board meeting, they're not actually an organization yet. So given that, we discussed it and leaned towards not inviting them here at this point because we wouldn't be comparing apples to apples. So at this point, I feel like we can make a decision one way or the other on the VSBA because at this point, there's not another option. It's either VSBA or not.
Or not.
Following up on that letter, I've had just a few contacts from other parts of the state asking because I think it was on the North Country agenda last week up at their board and they got a call on the results of that because they found the same thing, that the alliance is not really functioning. But anyway, some of the calls I got, it's interesting. I think that some of that group, because of the frustration for funding and everything, so they can have the staff, the strategy is, and I'll know more about it next month, is to recruit people to be on the VSBA board who maybe have a little different perspective than the traditional VSBA member. And I have a good friend in another part of the state who serves on that with me. There have been people doing work behind the scenes to say, maybe it shouldn't be just a good old girl and good old boy. I always call it good old boys club, but it hasn't been that way. So it's going to be interesting in the future to see where they go because unfortunately the Alliance doesn't have the funding to really be a formal organization. But I have to say, I do like their new strategy. If they feel that there are people in their towns or their areas that be maybe a little more receptive to some of the changes that people want, then get them on the board. Because you saw, I think you saw it the night I made the proposal. I think I lost by 2 votes. But doesn't make a difference. I lost by 2 or 22.
I know it was interesting that the one of the Davids from the Vermont Alliance, that's what he said, that on his board, that's their strategy.
Yeah, I know.
is to try and target particular seats and get folks on there with different mindsets.
Don, I looked on the website today and I was looking, it looks like from Franklin that there's 2 seats and there's only one filled. Is that
Right, and
true?
I'm recruiting, I've been talking with people in Enosburg and Richford and other places, and right now I have some maybes, but no definite, but there is another seat coming up that will be voted on when we go to Enosburg. Is it next week we go to Enosburg?
October
Yeah.
7th.
Yeah, it'll be there, and you don't have to have been nominated. The other thing that I did tell Julie after the last meeting, whenever the action is taken on the VSBA membership discussion, I will not vote. In fact, if there is a motion, I'll probably leave the room, because I am on the VSBA board. And even though I think maybe I'm kind of a thorn on the VSBA board, I'm still part of that board, and therefore I don't want to try to influence your votes. I won't be on that board if you don't join, but that doesn't make any difference either. But I just felt that I should recuse myself on this issue.
Given that, unless there's strong disagreement, I would entertain a motion to join the VSBA.
Before, could I just ask if we could wait until our next meeting, because that VSBA meeting is in Enosburg on Monday. I don't know if anyone else has signed up to attend. I think that would be our opportunity to be able to speak with that board and find out a little more about what Dawn's talking about. Does it harm us to wait 2 more weeks to take action?
The only thing is, if Dawn is up for election and we vote for, I'm not a part of that organization, but you attend and vote and he's elected, and then we choose not to do it, then there's a vacancy. So
That they would have otherwise filled.
I don't know, he couldn't serve on the board.
Sure.
So I don't,
I suppose, to be blunt, if we decide not to vote,
it doesn't matter.
then it doesn't matter to us.
Either
We
way,
decide not to be members.
so yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, this is.
Well, we could take a vote now, and then if it doesn't pass, we could always take another one after that meeting if we feel like it. I mean, there is that. Or could we?
I don't know, because we're basically saying, if we have a motion to do it, we vote it down, that means we're not.
Could I make a motion to table until next time, and then we get to vote on
Sure.
whether or not we delay? And then that way.
Well, we never had a motion in the first
Okay.
place, so at this point, we're not tabling anything. You can just table it.
Well, I mean, if because I don't know, I would be very much in the minority here, and if other folks want to vote, is that a way for us to find out what the majority of the board feels, and either wait or not wait based on a vote?
Oh, I see, do a straw poll.
Yeah, or even just do that to find out if we want to go forward.
All right, so straw poll, whether we want to move forward tonight or table to next meeting. Who wants to wait till next meeting?
Fine with that.
There you go, we're waiting. Table, so at this point, VSBA membership discussion is tabled to, where are we, October, last week.
How many of us are planning on going to Monday's meeting?
50, thank you.
Yeah. Somebody go get Dawn.
You guys going?
Thanks, Wendy.
It's her birthday.
Oh, I gotta text. Come on, we'll pay for it in the parking lot. I gotta-
Okay.
I'm gonna text.
I'm gonna try.
Warrants. Check warrants.
Somewhere.
I don't have them. You have them.
I do not have them anymore. These are the bills.
Oh,
The warrants are for the month of September.
well, then,
Thank you.
Hmm?
Well, it's actually gonna go to Chris. He reads the, these are the warrant. Oh,
Yes.
do you want me to do it?
okay.
Just for you. Okay. Accounts payable, $1,226,229.44. Payroll checks totaling $56,907.68. Payroll other disbursements, $1,407,001.56. Payroll deductions, $493,437.21, for a total of $3,183,575.89.
Was that that was the motion, right?
No, well, that was the reading of it,
The read-
but, so I'll entertain the motion to accept, check warrants as read.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion, who seconded? You.
Nathan?
Still working well for you people that are doing it?
No,
It's not working well?
no. It's been a struggle to get folks in every week. So I don't know, Laura and I discussed it the other day. What is going to be easiest? We've had a couple instances where we've had to have the checks run and signed and held for 2 board signatures. So I think there does need to be a discussion on a better approach, because it doesn't seem to be working for everyone. And it's hard because, you know, we all work, we all got families, we all in different areas, but if it should be like one person is designated to do the initial pickup from central office and then brings it to somebody, that's what we did in Swanton. Somebody would pick them up from central office, they'd go through them and they'd bring them to the next person's home. That's not as easy because we're not in the same town, but I am not comfortable with the fact that there have been a couple instances where we've had to hold things.
It is a little bit uncomfortable because obviously we can date the checks and we can hold them, and that the whole purpose of doing that is because the treasurer is scheduled to come in on Wednesdays. I can push them back to Thursdays, but that's as far as I can push them back without waiting another week. So I have asked Anne Marie a couple times to run the checks, we hold the checks, but those are time and date stamped in the system, so I can change the date on the check, but if not, there looks in the system, so it's not ideal.
My concern is I had a day off, and just for the hell of it, I stopped by and I signed a whole pile of stuff. I did not expect to be there that long. My issue is the email MBSD. Call me. And I told Anne
But
Marie
it's
that.
every Monday and Tuesday. I thought we had solidified that, and again, whatever works is fine. I'm happy to email, but it literally is every single Monday and Tuesday. I can stay as late as I want. I'm often there very late, and we have somebody there as early as 6:50 most days.
Sue, I know, I get that. And
So it's really every week. But if an email helps, I'm happy to email. We can drive to
I have
people.
3 email addresses, and with MBSD I have 4.
Yeah.
And so I don't check them all every day.
Well, you can set it up so it forwards to whatever your preferred account is. I have my personal Gmail account. I have like 8 different email addresses just for different reasons, but they all get forwarded. They're all as different aliases, so I can send as MVSD through MVSD, but I don't have to log into a separate account.
But I haven't been emailing every week because I thought, and
I
you were
know.
not at the meeting that we were at. I think I followed up with you after.
I think
but-
the 3 of us need to get together. I think maybe for the whole board, if we still want to have 2 signatures, then there's nothing for the board to discuss. I think
I think
it's
we
really
have
up
to
for the
have
3 of us to
Right, the way the
coordinate, come up
language
with
is
a
right now, you
system.
have to
have to have 2.
Because I don't think the board makes the decision on can we drive the stack of bills, to each other at work or, at home.
Is this only accounts payable?
It's all
Payroll,
Payroll is
payroll
pretty
is covered
standard,
by
right?
the motion that you made that we can pay contracts.
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I thought, so accounts
Yeah.
payable. I don't know if you want to go back to it, I'm not even sure it's a viable solution, but the MVU model did work.
I would really prefer not to go back to
Didn't work
that
for you,
model.
huh?
Well, because it's not me. I mean, carrying a bucket of bills with backup. I mean, this one alone is $3.1 million. So, I mean, you're talking the volume, and I mean, I'm happy to do whatever. But the idea of people coming into the office is just nice because I can pull every resource if I need to. I can look in the system. I can follow up. We can look at backup usually, right there
It
on the
takes
spot.
Quite a bit of time.
Yeah.
It does. It's
does.
like I said, the day off I was driving by, I was there 45
It does.
minutes.
It's a lot coming everyone. That's what Megan and I were talking. Like I totally get that. I'm trying to balance what I'm asking
understand.
my AP person to do, the treasurer to do, and so.
I'm working 2 different locations. I don't know what your situation is, but
So maybe consolidation.
I'm not
would be
Franklin,
one.
St. Albans,
I'm St.
Swansea,
Albans and
Illinois.
Amesbury.
No, I know it's not
So-
convenient. I get it.
Does it have to be a person from each different town? on the committee to sign? Does it have to have equal
No.
representation?
We just have
It
to have
was
two
just decided
supervisors.
Would it be easier for everybody if I mean, you guys talk about it, if it would be easier to have Swanton people do it?
It was discussed, I mean, it was, I don't know if there was an official vote, but it was discussed that people wanted.
And I almost go by there. It's
Different. Okay.
shame on me because I'm Enosburg St. Albans.
I think those
So
two,
he's
three
two
people work
different-
it out. That's the next step.
Yeah, that's what.
It's the whole
I think the whole
Okay.
idea was to have like others to lean on,
Yep.
you know, not the same one person every time, but
Yeah,
you
we
could
should
trade
schedule.
off. You know, I think that's
I
the
have to
whole
put it on
idea.
my
If the three of us
calendar
put together a
reminder.
schedule.
Just put it on
That's
my
what I ended
reminder
up doing, Steve.
every Tuesday.
Every Monday and Tuesday, it's on there,
Yeah.
go, because I inevitably hit okay on Monday and then I forgot. So now I have it on Mondays and Tuesdays.
I'll tell my wife she's really big on post-its.
And I'm happy to follow up. It's just sometimes if I
I
feel
get it.
bad if I'm emailing a couple times and
Just
I want
like
to be pushy
us.
about it.
No, don't worry about that. I've told you that before.
So you guys have it.
Just tell me. Yeah, we'll get it.
So at this point, you guys are gonna meet, kind of iron this out, and we'll figure it out later. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a board thing. We'll figure it out. We'll get it.
Okay, so back to our motion.
I didn't even thought of
Any more discussion about it?
I didn't get that answer when I asked it. I just read it.
Good thing you remembered, I'd forgotten there was.
I
Yeah, oh yeah, we had a motion, we've been in discussion for
For quite
Ever.
some
about
time.
miles. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of accepting check warrants as read, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 9-0.
And I really don't want to add to the length of that, but I it's not. This is quick. In the drive, the reoccurring bills that you had given us approval to pay, I told you we're going to keep a running list. There's a spreadsheet in there, so if you ever want to look of the reoccurring bills, it's a work in progress. We're adding to it, but it's in there. So
Thank you, Laura.
sorry.
It was okay. Very
Zip
good.
Okay, on to other business, superintendent central office updates.
So you have our newsletter, and I will give some highlights about my section of the newsletter. I wanted to make sure that people understood what the work of the administrative team is. We meet every other week. We go over what the board agenda is so that principals can give input into that and see what input they may want or what's going on at the board to see what they, is there a priority for them, for example, to come and have a conversation. I was very pleased to have folks here today when we were talking about the school choice, for example. One of the big pieces of work that they're doing right now, we met over the summer, as I said before, and we talked about many things, but one of the things we did was brainstorm administrative tasks that we may do differently as a single district than as separate school districts. We already have a multi-year plan for our instructional work and curriculum work and multi-tiered systems of support. But the work around building and grounds and sharing custodians and how we use technology or how we make purchases, all of that is an administrative work plan. And there's a lot of it, and you don't do it all in a single school year. You do it over time. So we brainstormed ideas and topics that were things we identified we should look at. And the next step that we just went through last week was prioritization. So what are the things like how we are going to build a budget in a merged district? Obviously, we can't wait 3 years to figure out how we want to do that. We have to do that immediately. That's an urgent priority. Versus, do we buy our paper together as a single district instead of two separate purchase orders? That maybe can wait a year or two. I'm just pulling those two out of the air as examples. But it's a very comprehensive process. We had, I think, 8 different topic areas, from communication to, again, building and grounds, technology. Hiring process is a big one. So all of those are being looked at. The other thing I wanted to, and I won't go into it too much, because I know Tanya and I will be doing a presentation in the future about Act 173. But Act 173, for those that don't know, is the law that passed, wasn't last year, it was the year before.
2 years ago.
On a change in how special education is funded and how special education services are delivered. And it is probably the most transformative law in public education in a long time. It really is using money as the stick to change how we do things. It doesn't mean that it doesn't come for a good reason. Vermont spends $10,000 more per student, essentially twice what the national average is per special education student. And our outcomes are okay, but they're not necessarily the same as good as some other states just right around us. So there was a study that was done and a law that was passed to make some changes, not necessarily reduce right away. There was a lot of fear around that. But we do have concerns about how, not so much about the law. Many people have concerns about the law itself. I'm not saying I'm not concerned. But of more concern is the way the state wants to implement the law. We have already had a delay in the implementation of the law because the state is not ready with their rules and regulations. They are still not ready with their rules and regulations. So it's going to be, the next year is going to be very interesting, and we'll keep the board informed of changes. I'm on the Special Education Advisory Council, which is a governor appointment, and I'm on an Act 173 work group of superintendents and school board members and all kinds of stakeholders. They'll be meeting for the first time in October. So we'll be focused on reading the rules and regulations and giving input into them. But we're already concerned about some of the implementation. But what we're getting from the state at this point is they're using the framework of the education quality standards to support as their technical assistance to us. So essentially they're telling us we need to have good ESTs, we need to have a well-articulated curriculum, we need to have local assessment plans, and we need to have needs-based professional learning. Those are very broad topic areas. We do all of those things here. It's all work we are continuously doing. We'll see what the technical assistance looks like. But you will be getting more direct information from us about this act as it plays out. I do have the attendance numbers for you
Thank you.
there, and a lovely picture of Megan.
I know, I already told her.
Her little boy.
It's a great picture.
I already showed you the picture.
Oh, it's the one
It's that one. It's not a surprise. I wouldn't do that to you.
You didn't tell me you're putting it in the thing.
It is a great
It's on
picture.
Facebook.
Look how happy it
This
is.
is less public than Facebook.
It's okay.
That's a great
There's
picture.
only like 10 people, so it's fine. So I will then move to the curriculum director, and we'll have each department give an overview of their update, and I will scroll so you can remind what the update was.
I just want to update you on when I had given you information about the annual snapshot, which is now a public website where anyone from the public can go in and get information on a supervisory union or a district or a school. So initially, they had just reported how we were doing on academic proficiency, where we were meeting expectations. They've now released some more information. So on personalization, we were exceeding expectations. Safe and healthy schools, we were exceeding. High quality staffing, we were meeting. In 2017-18, we had 39 new teachers. Last year, we had 35, and this year it's 24. So in terms of teacher retention, we are doing okay. The last one was investment priorities, in which they put us as approaching, and I called up Patrick Halliday, who's the agency of ed, saying, why were we approaching? And he explained that they have like an ideal ratio, And if you're above and or below, then they give you some kind of rating. So he said it's nothing huge to be concerned about, but we are approaching, so we are almost there in terms of teacher to student ratios, staff to student ratios, and things like that.
And we could be too high.
We could be too high. So currently we have 219 teachers in our district and 111 paraeducators. So those are things we're already looking at in terms of what our real needs are.
So
And-
are they telling us whether we're too high or too
No.
low?
No, they're not. They're
That's-
just telling
That's
us.
for us to do.
That's real
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah,
You're not,
Um,
you know,
yeah.
We're not, and I've looked at, I think it was when, last spring, when we had the superintendent and school board chair training, that conference, someone shared statewide data from the student staff ratio study that was done, and the result of the study was it's too complicated to legislate. But the raw data was shared with us, and I don't know if I still have it. It may have been one of those things they share with you for the conference itself. But I went through and looked at all those to see where we were. We were kind of in the middle everywhere, so we weren't really high, we weren't really low, we were sort of in the middle for every way.
that would make sense if they told you you were too low, too high, or acceptable middle, but to just tell you that you're wrong.
We are just not the ideal.
We're not in the
That's what they
ideal,
said.
whatever that sweet spot
Chalk
is.
it up to agency of ed.
Yeah. So that was just information that was added to that website. And then in terms of professional development, Highgate and Franklin have started the Lead to Read professional development this year, which is in collaboration with the Stern Center. All our teachers are participating. They have a 30-hour online course that they're taking, which is called Mind Play, and it's all about early literacy and how reading develops in students. And then the Stern Center has 2 coaches coming to our district every month. They unpack these modules that the teachers are learning together with the teachers. And then in addition, they're providing individual coaching to every teacher in Highgate and Franklin. And the feedback I've got from Brio and Franklin and Edna and Highgate and the principals is that the teachers are really enjoying it and learning a lot. So far it seems to be going really well.
How come Swan was not included?
Swanton is, they are planning to take it next year because this year their teachers are all involved in taking the math menu course. So since they were already enrolled in doing math, they didn't want their teachers to be taking 2 courses at the same time. But
And then we work with the science.
yeah,
So we're
yeah.
doing science.
Yeah, and Swanton is also doing the embedded science training, so they are most likely going to take this on next year. And then, as Jen already mentioned, Liz Mira has been here in MVU doing science consulting. Christian Quartermant, who is our math consultant, he's also the trainer who did all the math menu training in Highgate and Swanton. This year, we have hired him for 6 days to work specifically with our math coaches at the elementary level, and he is really working with them to hone in on their coaching skills and how do you work with teachers. So he did 1 day of training with them, and that went really well. MVU is also this year through their school improvement grant. They are working with partnerships for literacy and learning, which is the same group that did our literacy audit in the elementary schools. And they're providing a consultant who's really going to work with their teachers on writing instruction and improving writing workshop in the classroom. In terms of our workshops, as you all know, we adopted a new supervision and evaluation model based on Marzano's framework. And last year we offered 5 workshops for teachers and administrators after school. They are 1.5 hours. And all the coaches in our district are running those after school workshops for anyone who wants to go to learn more about the model and what principals will be observing them doing in the classroom. We had our first one on September 23rd. It was held in Highgate, and Edna and Jen, who are the literacy and math coaches, ran that. And we had 23 teachers from the district attend. And these were teachers from all 4 buildings. So those are going to continue. We have 4 more coming up. The next one is in Swanton. So that's all the good professional development that started this year.
Some of the students don't recognize what that picture is. So the big report that I have is centered around E911. As you can read, schools need to be in compliance with the new state rules. There are a couple of changes to that rules. The key change is that from any phone that you pick up, you can dial 911 without dialing a prefix, like 8 or 9 to get it line out. So right now, MVU is the only school that is fully compliant. I'm working with Consolidated Communications Fairpoint, our provider for Swanton and Highgate, and the Franklin Telephone, the Franklin provider, to come up with a couple of options. And by January 2020, we will be putting together either a compliance plan or to become compliant at that time. So whether if it's too costly, if the quotes are too costly to do within this budget, we have a plan for the next fiscal year in January. We know that plan in January. So that's our goal. And, so voice over IP is the protocol. There are a couple of options. One is the VoIP is what MVU currently has in place. It's probably the most costly plan, but the savings are on the management side of things, and obviously Paul Grigwire managing a school this size can't say enough good about VoIP. It may not be the right fit for the other schools, but we'll look at the options. There's a couple of other options, working with the local phone providers of the phone systems, something called PRI. All these acronyms are brand new to me, so if you feel like throwing a bunch of them out there, don't feel too bad about it. So PRI is one option, primary rate interface that they're giving us. And another option is having a company host the 911 cost for us. There's an ongoing cost for that. But all of this stuff, we're gathering the information right now, and like I said, by January, we'll have a compliance plan in place.
There are $25,000 grants per location available that we'll be applying for as well, and that helps with the initial investment, but not with the ongoing costs, so.
Cameron?
So Julie already kicked us off a little bit with 173 discussion, but I just want to take the opportunity to share a little bit about what that's looking like for us right now. So along with the Act 173 being around the sort of the quality of instruction for students, it has much to do with the funding structure around how special ed is funded. So it's twofold. It's looking at special ed funding, but also then looking at how are we supporting all students, and that's through the EST process that Julie was talking about. And the mechanism for that is that we will be shifting to a census-based block grant, which is a very different way of funding special education than we have historically used. Right, so currently the Agency of Ed reimburses us at about 60% for all of our special ed costs. That is, we are moving from that strictly a reimbursement. Like now we tell them this is how much we spent, and they give us 60% back in various formulas. So that's about what happens. Moving forward, so starting the year after next, we're moving into a block grant that will look. For a while, it will be our own spending for the last several years, based divided by our child count or our ADM, and then we will eventually get up to a base rate amount that the state is setting for us. So across the state, we will all receive the same base rate amount per pupils. So as we figure out what that means for us, if we're actually going to maybe gain a little or lose a little, it really depends on many factors, partly the number of students we have. So we're working on sort of understanding how that's going to play out. In preparation for that, we are looking very carefully at our spending and I had mentioned before, looking very carefully at how we're supporting our students in classrooms, whether it be through supports to interventionists, paraeducators, what that looks like, how do we build capacity. So my leadership group is working with me right now to gather some of that data so we can look very carefully about how we're supporting students. And to have some baseline around, okay, so how do we shift? How can we do this better or more efficiently? Are there other practices we can use to support students? So we're doing that. The other sort of thing I just want to mention is that we are also right now, as we develop this, so we're on this service plan model right now, which is projecting our costs for next year. And I just want you to be aware of the fact that not only is 173 sort of on the horizon a year out from now, or not for next year, the year after, but the Agency of Ed has asked us, or as telling us, we need to do some shifting around our costs for out-of-district students. So right now, our out-of-district students typically are considered special ed costs because that's primarily what those placements are for. The agency issued these June memos in June. They've suddenly come to be known as the June memos.
Become dirty words.
That's a nice way of putting it.
The June memos telling us that actually we need to be allocating or distinguishing what portion of that money is gen ed cost. And all across the state, everyone's sort of just like, what are you talking about? That's not gen ed. Those are special ed costs. So there's a lot of talk in the field through the Vermont Council of Special Ed Administrators, through Laura's professional organization, a lot of push to understand what does that mean and how much of that cost are we allocating to gen ed. And right now what that means is we're scrambling, trying to figure out what that will look like for next year. And so we're looking for some answers, and the agency right now doesn't have those answers for us in terms of how do we calculate that anyway. So as we develop the service plan, that's due October 15th, and as we develop our budget for next year, and we will continue to talk about this, and we're working on it ourselves, it can mean a drastic change, quite frankly, in the amount of money that we are spending as an entire district because we're suddenly not getting reimbursed for some portion of that. This is an issue across the state. People are very upset about it because it's impacting local budgets. And I'm not throwing that out at 9 o'clock at night for us all to worry, but I just want to put that on your horizon to know that we are trying to figure it out. It could mean very little, it could mean a lot. It just depends on what the agency ends up sort of giving us for guidance around it. And right now there isn't. So we're doing our best, but for you to know that that is kind of what we're trying to sift out as we develop budgets. So, that happy note, let's hear from
Early childhood.
Preschool, pre-K is going to be a hot topic this year. In the early childhood world, we don't have June memos, we have September surprises, and it's October 1st, and I'm happy to report that this year, in the years that I've been in this type of work, is the first time we haven't had a September surprise, so that was really good. Kids are settling in, our students are settling into the classrooms nicely, and that's largely in part to high quality early MTSS practices and supports of families and buildings that we are all in. I included a little visual for us tonight of the pyramid model. It is kind of late, so I'm just doing a quick highlight of the pyramid model. The model shows us that the bottom of the pyramid, the bottom is the workforce, and you have a high quality workforce and nurturing and responsive relationships between students and staff, and high quality supportive environments. That's the yellow level and the 2 blue levels. That's what we consider high quality tier 1, that we focus a lot of our time on making sure that our environments are right, that our workforce is trained and knows what to do, and that's what all students get to access. And if we do those parts right, tier 1, we reach most of the students successfully, the majority of the students. there are a few students who would get some targeted social emotional scores. Those would be considered tier 2 level. And then they also, though, benefit from all of tier 1, right? But they just need a little extra. And then there's an even smaller number of students that would require intensive intervention. But I wanted to tell you what we're doing in ECP to address these. So for that base, the foundation of an effective workforce, every staff person in our program has either already completed, and I say that because new people will have completed the series by this spring, training modules in each of the tiers. So everybody has had the training. At this time, I can say everyone's had the training for the tier 1. So we're starting out the year, even the newest staff have had training on what does tier 1 look like in the classroom. So by the spring, everyone will be up to their 3rd module, and those are through the Pyramid Model Consortium. Coaching is provided to make sure classrooms reach at least 80% fidelity on the teaching pyramid observation tool, and that measures all of those high-quality tier 1 practices. We go in, we take a look at all of the pieces identified in tier 1, and we're reaching for that 80% fidelity. And all staff participate in professional learning communities to further develop their professional knowledge and skill. We do that at the special education level, we do that at the whole early childhood program team level, and we do include paraprofessionals once a month in that work. So then, if we're looking at the tier 1 level, which is the 2 blue bands, those are the universal, everyone gets this. Nurturing responsive relationships, we have a tool called the CLASS, the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, and that measures, there we go, down, a little further, a little bit further, there we go, universal. That measures child-adult interactions because relationships are so extremely important and they lead to greater outcomes for students. We use that to monitor where we are with our tier 1 nurturing and responsive relationships. We use Teaching Strategies Gold, which is the state-identified assessment system for tracking and monitoring a child's developmental level and planning next instruction for children. We have a variety of curriculum for addressing problem-based behavior, one of which is called Flip It, which focuses on identifying feelings, setting limits, inquiring with the child, and then prompting the child to change behavior and make a choice that's part of the classroom expectations. And then we use the DECA, the Devereaux's Early Childhood Assessment, and that helps teachers understand how students are progressing with respect to 3 key social emotional skills. How are students developing healthy relationships? How are they learning to regulate their emotions? And how are they showing initiative? Because those things are key indicators of later success for kids. In our environments, we have a high-quality curriculum, Connect for Learning. It's aligned with the pyramid model, provides structure through engaging investigations for students. And again, the teapot also promotes that because it looks deeply at the environment and how it's set up. Are we using visual schedules with students? Are materials accessible to students? Are they interesting to students? Once we've done all of that, for the next level, if we haven't reached all of the children and there's a few children that need that tier 2 level of support, we have educational support team process that we use to support children. And the DECA does provide very specific tier 2 guidance for supporting students. So we can look at where a child might be lagging and really drill down and pinpoint what does that child need in order to master this skill and be successful. And we also use tools like the CARES kit, which allows us to create adaptations for routines and activities. We start with what's the least restrictive way we can support this child. Can we change something in the environment? Can we change something in the materials? And then we follow along, and if that doesn't work, we go to the next step and follow it through. It's very prescriptive way of looking at it. And then for children who just have not responded to the tier 2 piece, we do have assessments and interventions that would result in individualized behavior support plans. For more information, early MTSS, the state's Building Bright Futures organization, maintains a plethora of information. You can visit this website. A little future note, the next 3 months, as the board moves from location to location, so not in October, but starting in November, the first meeting of the month when I give my report, I'm going to do a feature program in my report. So for the month of November, you'll be going to Franklin for the second meeting. So in the first meeting, we'll be focusing on Franklin ECP. And we'll do that in November. December, we'll do Highgate ECP, and in January, we'll end with Swanton ECP. You'll likely get to hear from some teachers, and they're looking forward to telling you about their programs. Thank you.
And Laura, did you have any highlights from your section of the board report?
It's audit week.
Auditors are here. I forgot they were there.
Yeah,
They're so quiet.
They are quiet. They're great to deal with. RHR Smith Company. I think we were in really, really good shape going into the audit this year, and that's something I'm really proud of our office for. So we were prepared. Things look good, and we've had no complaints so far, so that's good. But it's a lot of work.
We've done 5 in the last 3 weeks.
Other than that, I just want to say that we continue to work really hard. This transition to MVSD has not been easy, and it's probably going to continue for the next couple of years in the business office, to be honest. But the team, I heard a couple comments just today with the auditors that they feel like we're kind of rounding the corner. They're starting to feel a little more optimistic and positive about things in our office, which is really great for me to hear. So we're going to get there.
Very good. Okay, future agenda items. We already have truancy, policies, and negotiations. Is there any others anybody would like added?
I'd like to make a request for you and Julie when you do the agenda, that before we move to new business, we have anybody in central office will give a report, move their report early in the meeting. Maybe it's because of my age, but about 9:30, I'm ready to go to bed. So in fairness to them, I mean, it's great, you had like a half hour in the beginning and you come back, and you're sitting back there wondering, am I gonna get a turn? So I would ask, before we go to new business, anybody in central office that's gonna report, have a chance to report.
So you'd like the central office and superintendent newsletter moved up to?
Maybe not the superintendent, because she's gonna be here anyway. I'm thinking of these 4 people and Laura, if she has a report outside of her regular business.
Yeah, and to that point too, we might want to change the first of the month meetings to be 6:30 to 9, because I think they always do go longer, and it's just more realistic.
Can we start them earlier? Start them at 6?
That's difficult. Because you guys can't make it earlier, right? I struggle 6:30.
I'm not asking to change the time, I'm just asking to change the batting order.
No, I was thinking that as they were going through, and today was a particular, we are trying to balance the agenda items so that it's not, for time, right? We are meeting twice a month, there's 4 hours of board meeting. We should be able to get everything done in that time, but it's a struggle because we have good discussion.
Shouldn't that be included underneath the presentations?
We could put the presentations, I think having the presentations up.
Well,
And the thing is, there are some action items, and Julie's report, and some of the things that we get, certainly we're going to follow, but I just think that a lot of good information comes in kind of late in the meeting, and I'd like to see it early in the meeting.
Presentation.
That's just me.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Of course, I'm old too, guys. I said I'm old too, so it's not.
Okay. Yep.
I'm with you.
Say snow this morning.
And we're talking about winter coming on too, so.
There'll be a snowfall before the next meeting. No, nothing. At the end of the year in Swanton, remember we got all nervous because we didn't have a snowplow and we were saying it's going to snow.
Yeah.
All right, future meeting dates, our next board meeting will be the 15th at Swanton School Library. And then the VSBA regional meeting will be October 7th from 5:30 to 8:30 at Enosburg High School.
And there is a light supper, it's usually pretty good. It starts around 5 or so. 5. So don't eat a lot before you come.
So at this time, I still need a motion.
You need a motion to go into executive session
That's a
and
little
invite in Jason Butler.
Okay, at this time, I entertain a motion to go into executive session and inviting Jason Butler in and Julie.
I'll make that motion.
Huh? Eric?
I'll
Second?
Yep.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of going into executive session at 9:10, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. We are going to executive session.
We didn't invite Dina.
Are we gonna move?